The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1892. Episode 7, The Blue Carbuncle. Welcome back, fellow detective. After witnessing how a respectable gentleman could transform himself into London's most successful beggar, you might think you've seen the limits of human deception. But today's case will show you that sometimes the most extraordinary crimes unfold through the most ordinary objects, and that Christmas miracles can take the most unexpected forms. Have you ever wondered how a priceless gem could travel across London hidden inside something so commonplace that thousands of people encounter it daily without suspicion? Prepare yourself for one of Holmes's most delightfully festive mysteries, where a Christmas goose, a battered hat, and a stolen jewel create a puzzle that will test every ounce of your deductive abilities. Picture yourself on the second morning after Christmas, December 27th, 1889. When London is blanketed in fresh snow and the streets still echo with holiday cheer. You arrive at 221B Baker Street to find Holmes in an unusually jovial mood, examining what appears to be the most ordinary objects imaginable. A black felt hat, somewhat worse for wear, and a magnificent Christmas goose. "Watson," Holmes calls out as you enter with the good doctor. "Perfect timing. I have here one of the most intriguing puzzles of the season, delivered to us courtesy of Peterson, our faithful commissionaire." Holmes gestures dramatically toward the humble objects displayed on his desk like precious artifacts. Peterson himself stands nearby, still brushing snow from his uniform. "It happened just after midnight on Christmas Day, Mr. Holmes. I was walking home through Goodge Street when I witnessed the most peculiar altercation. A tall man was carrying this goose and wearing this hat when he was suddenly attacked by roughs near the corner." Think about this scenario, detective. What kind of man walks through London's streets after midnight on Christmas, carrying a goose and wearing a hat that has clearly seen better days? What does this combination tell you about his social status and circumstances? Peterson continues his account. "When I rushed to help, the attackers fled, but the gentleman himself ran away too. He dropped both the hat and the goose in his panic. I called after him, but he disappeared into the crowd of late-night revelers. I brought both items here, thinking you might find the mystery amusing." Holmes picks up the hat with reverent care, as if it were a holy relic. "Peterson, you've brought me a Christmas gift more valuable than any store-bought present. This humble hat will tell us more about its owner than a detailed biography ever could." Watch carefully as Holmes demonstrates the art of deduction from seemingly insignificant details. First, observe the hat's general condition. Holmes begins, turning it slowly in his hands. "It's well made, expensive when new, but now showing considerable wear. The silk lining is frayed, the band is discolored, and there are several small burns from a pipe or cigar. What does this suggest about the owner's current financial situation?" Before you can answer, Holmes continues with growing excitement. "The hat is large, size 7 3/4, indicating a man of substantial physical build. But notice how the elastic has stretched, and the leather sweatband shows deep impressions. This hat has been worn regularly for several years, suggesting its owner cannot afford to replace it despite its shabby condition." "Most revealing of all," Holmes says, pointing to microscopic details you might have missed. "Observe these lime cream stains near the band, and this candle wax on the inside crown. The lime cream tells us he's married. No bachelor would have such stains from breakfast spills. The candle wax indicates he goes to bed by candlelight, suggesting gas has been cut off for non-payment." Can you see how Holmes builds a complete picture of a man's life from these tiny clues? A once prosperous gentleman now fallen on hard times, trying to maintain appearances while struggling with poverty, married, and probably drinking too much judging by the hat's condition. "But what about the goose?" Watson asks practically. "Surely that will provide additional clues about our mysterious Christmas wanderer." Holmes's eyes light up with anticipation as he examines the magnificent bird, which even in death displays the plump perfection that would make any Christmas dinner memorable. "Indeed, Watson, this goose represents the final piece of our puzzle." Holmes carefully inspects the bird's legs and finds a small card tied with string. "For Mrs. Henry Baker," it reads in neat handwriting. "Ah, so our hat owner is Henry Baker, and this goose was destined for his Christmas table. But here's where the mystery takes an extraordinary turn. As Holmes continues his examination, his fingers detect something unusual about the bird's crop, the storage area in its throat. "Peterson, fetch my surgical instruments immediately. I believe this goose has been carrying more than just Christmas dinner." With careful precision, Holmes makes an incision and reaches inside the bird's crop. What he extracts leaves everyone in the room stunned into silence. A brilliant blue stone the size of a walnut, blazing with inner fire that seems to capture and reflect every ray of light in the room. "Great heavens," Watson gasps. "That's not just any gemstone. That's the Blue Carbuncle, the famous jewel that was stolen from the Countess of Morcar's hotel room just 5 days ago." The newspapers had been full of the theft, describing it as one of the most audacious crimes of the season. Holmes holds the stolen gem up to the window, where it catches the winter sunlight and transforms it into a cascade of brilliant blue fire. "Watson, we are now in possession of one of the world's most famous jewels, valued at over 20,000 pounds. But how did it come to be hidden inside a Christmas goose belonging to a man whose hat suggests severe financial difficulties? Think carefully about this development, detective. What chain of events could result in a priceless stolen gem being hidden inside a goose destined for a poor man's Christmas dinner? Was Henry Baker the thief, or is he an unwitting accomplice in someone else's scheme?" Holmes immediately springs into action with his characteristic energy. "Peterson, place an advertisement in all the evening papers. Found at the corner of Good Street, a goose in a black felt hat. Mr. Henry Baker can have the same by applying at 6:30 this evening at 221B Baker Street. We'll see what kind of man comes calling for his Christmas dinner." But Holmes's real plan is far more cunning. Of course, we won't mention the carbuncle in our advertisement. If Baker is innocent, he won't know the goose contained anything unusual. If he's guilty, his reaction when he sees a different bird will expose him immediately. At exactly 6:30 that evening, a tall, distinguished gentleman arrives at Baker Street. Despite his worn clothing and somewhat shabby appearance, he carries himself with the dignity of someone who remembers better times. His face lights up with genuine relief when he sees his hat. "Mr. Baker, I presume." Holmes greets him warmly. "I'm delighted to return your property. Please have a seat by the fire and warm yourself. Peterson told me about the unfortunate incident on Christmas morning." Holmes watches carefully for any sign of guilt or nervousness. But Henry Baker's response is entirely consistent with innocence. "Thank you so much for your kindness. I was devastated to lose that goose. It was a Christmas gift from my employer, and my wife had been looking forward to our holiday feast all week. When those ruffians attacked me, I'm afraid I panicked and ran." Holmes tests him further. "I hope you don't mind, Mr. Baker, but we had to dispose of the original goose. It was beginning to spoil in this warm weather. However, I've purchased a replacement that should serve just as well for your Christmas dinner." He produces another fine goose from the kitchen. Henry Baker's reaction confirms his complete innocence. His face shows nothing but gratitude, with no hint of disappointment about receiving a different bird. If he had known about the carbuncle hidden in the original goose, he would have been devastated by this substitution. "You're too kind, sir," Baker says with genuine emotion. "My wife will be so relieved. We've had a difficult year, and this goose represents more than just a meal. It's our entire Christmas celebration." After providing his address and expressing his heartfelt thanks, Henry Baker departs with his replacement goose, clearly having no knowledge of the fortune that had briefly passed through his possession. So Baker is innocent, Watson concludes. But that raises an even more intriguing question. How did the stolen carbuncle end up inside his Christmas goose? Someone must have deliberately placed it there. But who and why? Holmes's investigation now shifts to tracing the goose's origin. The card identified it as coming from Mrs. Henry Baker, but where did she acquire such a fine bird? Let me consult my street directory and trace the supply chain that brought this particular goose to the Baker household. The trail leads Holmes through London's Christmas poultry markets, from the wholesale dealers at Leadenhall Market to the retail shops in Covent Garden. At each stop, Holmes uses his legendary powers of persuasion and deduction to extract crucial information from suspicious vendors. The breakthrough comes at Breckenridge's poultry shop in Covent Garden, where the proprietor initially refuses to cooperate. "I sell hundreds of geese every Christmas season. How am I supposed to remember one particular bird or where it came from?" But Holmes employs psychological manipulation worthy of a master chess player. "Of course, you're right to be cautious. I'm sure a man in your position deals with all sorts of unsavory characters trying to trace stolen goods. You're wise not to get involved in such matters." This reverse psychology works perfectly. Breckenridge's pride compels him to prove he knows his business thoroughly. "Nonsense, I know every bird I sell and exactly where they come from. That particular goose was part of 24 I purchased from Oakshot's farm in Surrey, sold here to a man named Ryder who works at the Hotel Cosmopolitan." Holmes's eyes flash with the thrill of the chase. "James Ryder, the upper attendant at the Countess of Morcar's hotel. Watson, we've found our thief, and now we understand his clever but ultimately flawed plan." The pieces of the puzzle are finally falling into place. Ryder had stolen the carbuncle during the chaos following its discovery in the Countess's room, but found himself trapped with evidence too dangerous to keep and too valuable to destroy. His solution was ingenious. Hide the gem inside a goose that would be processed and sold, planning to buy it back later when the investigation had cooled. But Ryder made one crucial error. He lost track of which specific goose contained his hidden treasure among the dozens Breckenridge was selling. In desperation, he bought multiple birds, hoping to retrieve the right one, but the carbuncle-bearing goose had already been sold to Henry Baker. When Holmes and Watson arrive at the Hotel Cosmopolitan to arrest James Ryder, they find a man consumed by panic and guilt. The moment he sees them, his face turns ashen, and his legs give way beneath him. "Please, Mr. Holmes," Ryder begs, collapsing into a chair. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I was desperate. My sister's children were going to starve, and I saw an opportunity that seemed victimless. The Countess has insurance. She'd never miss one jewel among so many." Holmes's response reveals the compassionate side of justice. "Mr. Ryder, your method was clever, but your reasoning was flawed. Theft is never victimless. It destroys trust and corrupts the thief's soul. However, I sense this was an act of desperation rather than habitual criminality." In a surprising turn that demonstrates Holmes's belief in redemption, he makes an extraordinary decision. "Mr. Ryder, I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself. Return the carbuncle to the Countess, resign your position, and leave London immediately. If you never commit another crime, I'll consider this matter closed." The case concludes on Christmas Eve with Holmes personally returning the blue carbuncle to the Countess of Morcar, who is so delighted to recover her treasure that she asks no questions about how it was found. James Ryder disappears from London, hopefully to start a new life far from temptation. As Holmes and Watson sit by the fire that evening, sharing a Christmas drink and reflecting on the case, Holmes offers a profound meditation on justice and mercy. "Watson, in this season of forgiveness, I chose to give a desperate man a second chance rather than destroy his life completely. Perhaps the spirit of Christmas demands that we balance justice with compassion." The Blue Carbuncle case represents one of Holmes's most charming investigations, where brilliant deduction combines with seasonal generosity to create a resolution that satisfies both logic and heart. A stolen gem found its way home through the most unlikely path, teaching everyone involved valuable lessons about temptation, desperation, and redemption. Years later, Holmes would receive an annual Christmas card from James Ryder, now working as an honest farm laborer in Australia, each card serving as proof that sometimes mercy can achieve what punishment cannot, the genuine transformation of a human soul. So tell me, detective, did you deduce how the carbuncle ended up in the goose before Holmes revealed the solution? What does this case teach us about the difference between justice and mercy? And how do we balance compassion for the desperate with protection of society's rules? This delightful Christmas mystery reminds us that the season of giving can inspire both the worst and best in human nature, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can offer is the chance for someone to redeem themselves. Join me next time as we investigate The Adventure of the Speckled Band, a case where a young woman's life hangs in the balance, and Holmes must solve a locked room mystery involving a dying man's cryptic final words and a terror that strikes in the dead of night.